3 kids.
3 kids, 1 set of twins. It is you were lamenting that a lot of parents kind of make remarks about.
No, I just think that if you go into it with an open mind, being retired military, it kind of was surprising to my wife about the way we raised my boys. But I'm a firm believer in it's anything in life, whether it's work, whether it's you're a manager of any situation with kids, it's easier to let up versus trying to be very easy from the beginning. And I was very strict with them, and had them in a disciplined type of schedule, routine, to where now they're very well-mannered, respectful. It did help that early on I started them in martial arts. And so,
which type of martial arts?
Taekwondo.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a organization called the American Taekwondo Association, ATA. And my one son, Lance, you can look him up, Lance Lawsin. He was on ESPN 4 times. He's a 6-time world champion, but a third-degree black belt. And it's just...
with an I?
Yeah, Lawsin. And he was just amazing. He's one of those kids that all his instructors loved it because he was able to pick up things pretty quickly and master it. And he won. There was a talent show in Charlotte at the time with the Hornets, with Kids Got Talent, Charlotte's Kids Got Talent. He won that because he does a lot of tricking and jumps and flips. So my point there is when I started my 2 boys with Taekwondo early on when they're 4, it just helped me raise my kids because they, well, that's funny because
Is this it?
No, that's the Asian American News Network that did a piece on Lance.
Well, I mean, that's close enough, and the imagery is pretty
good
dang
enough
cool.
there.
So yeah, that's him.
And I might even have a YouTube video.
There is a YouTube. Yeah, there he is. That's Lance.
Oh, okay.
That's on ESPN.
Wow.
He was 9 in that video. He's only 9.
This is not the same kid I saw 1 year ago.
That's Lance.
That's fantastic. So you got them started. You got them started early on that.
And I'm a big proponent of it. It's because not everybody's going to do as good as Lance, but just the life skills, the confidence it gave him. His brother's also a first-degree black belt, so I'm very thankful of it. And so, yeah, and there he is.
I love the finish. That's awesome.
Yeah, so
you can tell, you can see on his face, very determined.
Yeah, I call him my mini-me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
No, he's also 9 years old. He's super cute, doing that. But I think with stuff like that, it kind of teaches a certain level of discipline.
So whether I had 1 child or 2, I am thankful that I had 2 because not everybody has that blessing, and to not know any better, but to go about it the right way, knowing that I want these 2 young babies to be well-adjusted, respectful human beings. But you have to start off not so much, because I've never laid a hand on my kids, in the exact opposite. I was just tough on them, tough love. And now, hopefully I've given them the skills to be able to function on their own. And they're truly on their own right now. And I text them every couple nights. Not really. I try to do it once a week, so I'm not just bugging them. They're coming back this weekend for a fall break till next Wednesday, and I'm anxious to see them. But to be a dad of 2 twin boys, very blessed.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I think what you said there is just making them self-sufficient, help them think for themselves. Things that the education system should be doing, but might not be doing as much, in my opinion, at least, as they could be. Definitely could use a little bit of reform there.
Maybe they're doing too much in the wrong areas.
Probably, yeah. I would say so, probably, because I think your kids will get, we've said this before on our podcast at least, your kids are going to get indoctrinated one way or the other. The question is, what are you teaching them? That's really what the issue is there. But we could get into a lot of stuff, but we should probably get started with my not so wooden intro, because Connor doesn't.
This is going to become her new wooden intro.
I know.
Not having a wooden intro.
Well, since I don't know what it is, I think it's probably going to be great.
Aw. See, we only brought Ro here to compliment us. He doesn't really do anything at all.
No.
We found him and he seemed really nice.
They just wanted a pretty face.
Yeah, a pretty Asian face.
Pretty Asian face. Yes.
I know, to compete with mine.
We're in competition right now. So.
That's right. We've had too many white guests on, so
they're trying
too
to
many
balance
female
it out.
guests. Yeah, so we got to get that equality going here, or their equity, if
and
you
I
will.
think I've checked off like 3 or 4 boxes.
You
now,
have. So I mean, listen, we're in good shape. But welcome back to Resident Skeptics. We're really. Ooh, excuse me. Woo. We're really excited. We're always excited for each guest that we have because, as I say with every intro, and I'll always say this, each guest brings something different to the table. A lot of things that Connor and I just don't have. So today I want to introduce you to a very special guest named Lawsin, who is running for school board here in Charlotte, North Carolina, District 1. Now we already know a little bit about him. We've gotten the chance to talk. We're happy that he's even come here to just talk to us about what he's running on, what some of his concerns are with our school system, not just here maybe in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I have a feeling that the things that he's going to talk to us about today are going to be things that whether you are in Texas, whether you are in California, whether you're in Oklahoma, name a state, you would have some of these concerns as well. So we already got started talking, but Ro, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on.
We are. So for those of you who don't know you, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, the things that you think are just important or you just think are really cool, and we have to know what they are.
Okay. Again, Jordan, Connor, thank you for having me here. My name is Lawsin, and I am a first and foremost dad of 3 children. All 3 went through CMS. 2 of them just graduated in May from Huff High School. And now they're both freshmen, twins at NC State. And then I have a 16-year-old daughter that is a sophomore at Huff High, same high school as their brothers went to. I am a retired 21-year Air Force veteran. My specialty was counterintelligence, counterterrorism, and anti-terrorism, which leads into what we'll talk about later about one of my key issues of why I'm running. I was also the past president of the Huff High PTSA during COVID. So while we didn't get to do much, I was able to really get a behind the scenes as far as how do we, as a PTSA, Parent Teacher Student Association, intermingle and work with both the principal, the teachers, and then the parents. And having to do it during COVID, running our monthly meetings, getting updates from teachers, it was really nice to be able to see what went into that and who would fill in and what teachers were the go-to teachers to talk about what's happening in the English department, what's happening into the fine arts. So while we couldn't have a homecoming game or a homecoming even just a football game and all those things that normally happen, what I was able to find out was what makes a high school as big as Huff tick and operate. I was also past president of the Filipino American community in Charlotte. I'm a member of the American Legion. I was also at Huff, the tennis coach for 3 years. And coaching is in my blood. I love coaching, whether it's my son, whether it's my players at Huff. I was the coach from 2019 to 2021. And the 1 year that wasn't COVID interrupted, I was the coach of the year. And our team went undefeated. And we went as far as the semifinals in the state tournament. So couldn't quite get to the finish line and get my team, which is one of my goals, but proud of each and every one of them, especially my last season in 2021. But I am running for the Charlotte Mecklenburg School Board District 1 seat, which is North Mecklenburg. Mm-hmm. And really, it's since redistricting happened in 2020, or actually 2021, my district covers basically right at the 485 line, north of that, all the way to the end of Davidson. And then as far east as Skybrook and Highland Creek, and as far west as Mountain Island Lake and around that parts. So, but no, I'm glad to be here. excited to talk about the things that I'm going to be running on and hear some of the questions that you guys have been able to come up with and talk about with regards to education, both here locally and then across the country, because there's a big movement happening. There's a huge movement that I'm sure you'll get into with regards to education, school boards, the FBI, launching investigations into parents just because they're trying to speak up for their children, and so I think if there is, and I'm calling this year the year of the parent, where they're trying to take back their schools and trying to get better control of what's happening, whether it's books in the schools or the curriculum, and all that. But happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly just in that that quick 10-second sentence at the very end of everything you said opened an entire can of worms that we could talk about.
Well, let's open them.
Yes, but let's first. Okay, we're gonna back up a little bit. We're gonna talk a little bit about you though. Before, so you've said a lot of things. First, Air Force counterintelligence, and then tennis coach. You know, so you've been around a little bit. And you kind of said that you're like, okay, I was able to kind of see what made Huff High School tick. And for those of you that are not familiar about what CMS stands for, go ahead and just tell them what that stands for.
CMS stands for Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. And our school district is the largest school district in North Carolina. Some will say it's second to Wake, depending on who's counting. I think it's the largest. And we are the 17th largest school district in the country, with a $2.2 billion budget.
Okay. And so I guess, oh man, I'm going to have to ask you another question.
I'm just laying it out there for you.
Yeah. So in regards to CMS, in regards to its education, I don't know if you have the stats on the top of your head, but exactly where do we land, like education wise? Like how is the school system, the CMS school system doing overall?
Well, just to give you, the North Carolina Department of Education just came out with their report card for CMS. And 50 schools of the 180 received a grade of D or F, as far as whether it's end of course, EOC, or end of grade test scores, whether it's current graduation rates, whether it's the student outcomes. A big thing for me is third graders in 2019 were not reading at a 60% were not reading at a proficient level.
And so this is before COVID-19.
And so what's shocking is that number is right about the same post-COVID. So what does that tell you? The problem existed and the problem still exists. No changes have been made, yet they increased their budget from 1.3 billion in 2020 or 2021. Yeah, 2020. In 2021 is 1.7 billion. Now it's 2.2. Each year their budget continues to climb, either because cost of living, just the cost of doing business, but yet the scores and the student outcomes either stay stagnant or get worse. And what's even more alarming is 82% of Black and Hispanic students are not reading proficiently at the third grade level. 82%. And this is brought up by members of the Black Political Caucus, the African American Caucus. Education should not be politicized. And anybody that has a child in CMS is wanting drastic things, something immediately to happen, because it's this kick the can down the road approach that, okay, well, maybe someone else will take care of it, or maybe somehow magically the scores will get better. But as I just mentioned, in 2019 and in 2021, because they're still trying to calculate the results for 2022, the scores were almost the same. But one's pre-COVID, one's post-COVID, yet the numbers grow. So CMS is in dire straits. It's a sinking ship, and that's why I'm trying to run, because I want to try and inject new leadership, a fresh voice, common sense solutions. Because one thing that's been critical of the CMS board is they aren't solutions oriented. Because if they were, then they would be doing something immediately and around the clock, trying to come up with why our students aren't reading and writing and doing arithmetic at a proficient level. So that's just a small snapshot, Jordan, of how CMS is doing. So
yeah, well, you said you said 50 of the schools got a D, right?
D or F.
D or an F, and there's 150 schools.
So a third of them are.
Yeah. Actually, there's 180 schools.
180 schools.
Total schools between, all from K to 12.
Yeah, wow. So I don't know if you know this or not, but not that you want to use comparisons, but is that pretty normal, like, compared to other districts and other areas?
No, but I will find out. And with respect to, is it fair to compare Mecklenburg to, say, Union? Is it fair to compare Mecklenburg to Wake County as far as numbers? So, because that question was asked for me from several forums, is like, how would you reduce or try and impact the student outcomes, the discrepancies between some schools that are failing and some schools that are succeeding? And the state has this type of measurement that I think shouldn't really apply, because, as I just pointed out, each school should be judged and based on its own merit, because there could be so many things, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's the lack of resources, not enough teachers, because one school in District 1 might be fully staffed, but then another school in District 3 might not be. So is it fair that they're in the schools in District 3, many of them are teaching kids with a substitute teacher the whole year? When CMS started, they started it with 400 teachers short. And while they're going through the pipeline now, which is a very, very small pool of teachers to draw from, I think trying to reduce that education gap and the discrepancies and the dismal numbers, it's going to take a community effort of us really looking at what is it going to take to retain good teachers? What is it going to take to try and bring these scores up? Because I am never in favor of teaching to the test, because then you're just trying to do it to keep the money, which is my personal opinion, why CMS continues to grow. They want to keep the number of students and advance them, even though after COVID, which we can get into later, I really think that there is a huge education gap and loss that was given or done by the lockdowns. And there was a New York Times study that when I was on Pete Callender, that after I was interviewed, he continued with our conversation, and the study or the article, the report showed that in their findings, for those elementary students that were locked down and experienced learning loss, the amount of time it would take for them to catch up if there wasn't the lockdowns and COVID would be 3 years just to get back to normal. For middle schools, this study by the New York Times discovered it would be 5 years. So they didn't even go into what it would be for high school, because by then it's already too late. Even if they went in from 10th grade to 12th grade, they're either hopefully going to college or going to be career ready. But that is shocking. And so what I want to try to do is make sure and identify those students. And because the parents will tell you, my Johnny is struggling. He can't read, even though he moved from second grade to third grade and third grade to fourth grade. Well, if that happened during COVID and they didn't learn anything through second grade and you advance them to the next grade, they're actually 2 years behind, because they're not going to be able to learn what's happening in third grade when they learn nothing in the second grade. So all these things that I wish I could snap my finger and make everything better. But there's going to be a concerted effort that I want to involve the community and create these task forces that, hey, Ro, how can I help? Well, I've got PhDs, retired teachers, business people. I'm going to partner with this veteran, being a veteran myself, that has is suffering through PTSD, but went through 11 tours in Afghanistan. And to try to help those troubled teens, because there is obviously a problem. And violence, safety is a big issue with me. And many teachers are struggling with, how do we deal with those troubled students? Well, I want to create these programs that aren't just going to try and whip them into shape. I want to try and motivate them and show them that there's another path they can take instead of trying to be the disruptor in class. And I'm going to partner with not only this veteran, I want to bring veterans in to the school system, because many of them have skills that they can contribute, whether it's just on the surface, helping with the safety and security of the schools, but other things like this gentleman wanting to do to try and offer, a different perspective to them, instead of just putting them in detention or suspending them because they either got in a fight, brought a weapon to school, and then what do? Send them to the wayward school for CMS? I think there's other solutions out there. So, But it's going to be a big challenge, and some of which I'll share with you tonight, but most of which from day one is when the work begins. So
Yeah. No, you got into a lot of different stuff there,
For
Connor.
sure. I'm trying to pick a direction here.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack. Let's kind of talk a little bit about passing kids off when they're not ready. So let's talk a little bit about that. I guess one, I mean, I kind of want to know a little bit like more in depth what you think the motivation is.
Money.
Hands
down.
Yeah, money.
I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. If they can continue to keep the students moving on and filling seats, it's about money. Because if it wasn't, this school district, which is 142,000, could easily be split up at a minimum 4, if not 6 school districts, because the average school district size is 18 to 20,000 students. And we're at 142,000.
And so you're saying 142,000, it's just kind of to keep all the money.
Correct. Well,
one
at least to
place.
continue to receive the funding, money coming 10% from federal, 60% from the state, and 30% from the county. And
Yeah.
so when you reduce the numbers, because it's all based on per student. So if you start losing students, which they have been, because many parents aren't happy with CMS. So what do? They pull them out if they have the financial means. They're going to go ahead and send them to a private school. Or if they're lucky, they can send them to a charter school, because they get the winning lottery ball.
Right.
Or they just bring them home and do homeschooling.
Which has been happening a lot as well.
Yeah,
and in fact, one of my volunteers
been a big
is
movement
doing
there.
that now, because she pulled her child from Lake Norman and then went to Grand Oak, and now, unfortunately, isn't happy with the way that her son is being taught by the teacher, of trying to introduce a lot of these things of not necessarily rewriting history, but giving a different interpretation of history. And that's where we get into problems. And that's why so many parents are upset and concerned that just teach the history as it's been taught for years. Don't interject your personal opinion. But with regards to advancing them, it's all about the money. And you can try and argue, well, at least the scores justify the advancement. Really, does it? And if you could look at I want to try and explore other means of, one, making sure that they are able to advance and graduate to the next grade, but more importantly, retain the skills that are needed to be able to successfully learn in that next grade. So.
Yeah, but how are schools getting away with this? Where, okay, you have these kids that are getting, they're getting D's, in their classes, F's, and the teacher's like, well, they're not ready to go forward. But how are they able to do that if they literally don't have a passing grade?
Lower expectations.
But I guess
for example, during
legally
COVID,
speaking.
do you think this is legal that during COVID, because again, everything just went south, and even they will admit, which I'll agree with partially, that they were learning as they went. But every student at CMS started with a 50, whether or not they even showed up to class or not. They started a 50, and even if they didn't go to class, they still had a 50. So they lowered expectations. And so I think it starts from the top. If we don't have high expectations and pass that on to our principals and teachers to pass it on to the students and do everything they can to meet those expectations, that's how I think they're advancing. Because then, okay, well, it's no different than if a company has certain goals and criteria and they don't meet it. Well, then they'll just lower the goals and the requirements and the criteria. That's what they're doing with CMS. And that's how they're able to get away with it, because, okay, well, maybe the standards in CMS might not be the same for Iredell or for Union. I can't say that. What I do know is, based on fact, during COVID, any child, whether they showed up to class or not, started off with a 50.
And the teachers, they can't go below a 50.
They didn't? No, not during COVID. Now, of course, that's changed. The attendance policies changed, where now if you are absent from class for more than 10 unexcused, you will either fail that class or have to make it up, which I'm all appreciative, because students, the only way they're going to learn, they have to go to class. But for those that didn't want to show up, and there's many reasons why they didn't show up during COVID. One, maybe they didn't have an internet connection. Many students that live in the rural areas, internet access or Wi-Fi might not happen, or maybe they didn't have consistent Wi-Fi. And then it got to a point where, the teachers weren't even taking attendance, and even if they did, that's fine, because there's kids that I'm just going to blow off class. Because everything about COVID, which hopefully never comes around again. But advancing them, knowing that the standards and the expectations have been lowered, we can find different numbers and data to show that. I just think that hopefully, which they're starting to, coming out of COVID, raise the standards, raise the expectations. And it starts with our teachers. It starts with our board, making sure that we are introducing policy and in line with the curriculum standards that our schools have been accustomed to following, and it's driven by the state. So that's why I want to try and have a really good relations, starting with the Secretary of Education for North Carolina, and then working with the General Assembly, because much of our money is coming from them. There's many Title I schools in our schools that gets additional funding. So what I want to try to do is make sure that that money is going to the appropriate places, because going back to why are they advancing them? They're doing it because they want to keep the money coming. And so, but is the money being appropriated the most or in the best manner? So
yeah, well, I mean, that's a question for the United States as a whole. What is going on with our money?
Correct.
Where is it?
Oh, for sure.
Where is it going?
I think on the topic of money. So I don't know if you said it before we started recording or after, but you didn't like the idea of the grades of the school being the incentive for money, because then they just teach for the test, and then of course the kids just forget right afterwards.
Correct.
And it's clearly not working out for the CMS district based off of numbers. So what do you think might be the ideal way for schools to receive more funding? Or to receive funding period. I imagine we can't do a flat rate across the schools.
No, but with respect to the way they're doing it right now, it's based on need, based on budget projections, that starting from the General Assembly in North Carolina and assessing each respective, because there's 100 counties in North Carolina. So each county is going to be given its respective lot of funding. And history has shown that it's never going to go down. They've only continued to have increasing budgets. And I would just try and introduce something that's going to really hold each respective school accountable, that regardless of their location, regardless of the socioeconomic status, because let's admit, there's some schools that might be economically disadvantaged just because of location or demographic, versus others either north or south of those schools that are inner Charlotte. I think that each school with the learning superintendents that I just recently learned this, there's not just one superintendent. There's 7 learning centers that they're called assistant superintendents. There's this level of hierarchy at administration that I'm going to fully explore and see what do they do. But to your point, if you have these learning center superintendents, which are, I guess, assistant superintendents, are they helping the superintendent as far as trying to assess that particular area of their responsibility, the funding that goes to each and every school within that learning center and or respective district, because Mecklenburg County is split up into 6 districts. To answer your point, Connor, or your question, I don't know how we can try and find a fair and appropriate way to distribute funds, but make no mistake about it, the CMS budget has just continued to grow year after year. And whether it's because of a growing student population base, whether it's because of growing needs, whether it's because, as I mentioned earlier, that the cost of running a school this size is just very expensive because you have aging buildings and schools, and you're building new buildings and schools. You're trying to keep a teacher workforce happy. And one of the suggestions, especially with the dwindling teacher forces, well, let's just throw more money at them. And I don't think that's the solution either, because many of the teachers that talk to me, yeah, the pay would be nice, but they're looking more for support. They want to know that someone's got their back, and that's why I'm going to be accessible. I want to be transparent. And if you look at my 3 things, accountability and transparency is one of the things that I'm really going to try and promote, because and in terms of that transparency, I want to do a audit of the $2.2 billion. Where's it going? From top to bottom, just so that parents can see, because whether you have a child in CMS or not, if you are a taxpayer in Mecklenburg County, you've got a dog in this fight. So that's what I'm going to try to, and it might sound so simplistic, but I'm keeping things simple. I'm going to try and apply common sense solutions to this inflated, sinking ship of a school district that just continues to grow without making any adjustments. Now, they're trying to introduce either teacher assistants or substitute teachers to try and offset both the loss in number of teachers as well as continuity in the class between whether a teacher was there at the beginning and left or there was no teacher. One thing I really want to try and work on is looking at teaching methodologies, because as part of the student outcomes, one thing I need to find out is, are we teaching kids the right way? Just are we too arrogant to think that just because you have a certain degree and you've been teaching for so long, but yet if you're in a school and your particular class and students haven't been performing, but there's no adjustments made, I'm really going to try and promote, if not raise the professional development, but at the same time look at the teaching methodologies. I want to bring back, which they are slowly doing, phonics, because it worked in the past. It's been a proven teaching method for reading. And when over 60% of third graders right now aren't reading, then don't you think we owe it to the parents and the families to try and come up with another solution? Because it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and trying to expect a different result. So part of that, I want to explore all those schools around the country that are in economically disadvantaged communities, but yet are succeeding. Meaning their kids are testing well, they're receiving high scores, but despite the poor economic conditions, and take those programs and create pilots within CMS and see, okay, not just one, but let's try them all out and see if any of them work or some of them work, pull the successes from those and incorporate it in the CMS. Because I'm just thinking, what do we have to lose? What if something dramatic needs to be done now? That's what I want to try and do. And I'm partnering with a Dr. John Stone with the Education Consumers Foundation. He's out of East Tennessee State, and he founded this, where they pull up data on all the school districts in the entire country of how they're performing. And that's where he brought up, I've got this big 4 by 6 foot chart that shows the 110 middle schools elementary schools in Charlotte. And in 2019, that's where I got the 61%. And it shows it. It's either red or blue. Blue, they're proficient. Red, they're not. And of those that are not reading at the right in the middle, which indicates proficient, it's 61%. So I want to look at teaching methodologies. I want to try and examine, are the teachers getting the right professional development? And find out, is this a core problem? Is it isolated? But I just want to roll up my sleeves and find out, because it just seems like nothing's being done. And the scores and the outcomes prove it.
Yeah, it sounds like you want to start with the budget.
Yes.
Is that budget?
It goes to money.
Is that budget open source or no?
Right now, it's not, and I'm going to make it. So through my website, I want to try and be a funnel, so that parents don't have to try and dig deep and try and almost to the level of FOIA requests asking for public information. It's almost absurd, but that's what I want to try to do, and just make it accessible, starting with myself.
Yeah, no, I feel like as far as local citizens go, if your money's going into it, if you're paying taxes into it, then we should be able to see how the government's spending it.
Yeah, but a lot of times the government only gives you on a need-to-know basis.
Yes,
and CMS,
or they generalize
and
it.
CMS is no different. Is no different. That's why I'm a threat. That's why they don't want me to win. They don't want me on board, because guess what? I'm going to get to work. And I'm going to partner with the community, and I'm going to find out why this has been happening for so long, because it's just time.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up some good points where, as you were talking, the thing I was thinking was the soft bigotry of low expectations, believing that our students can't really do any better. And so we're not willing to really put in the work. And so we're like, well, if we're not willing to put in the work, then we're just going to lower the standard. And we keep lowering it. And this isn't just a CMS problem.
No, it's not.
Like this is a cultural problem at this point, where it's even happening in university level as well. There was a story that came out that a college professor got fired because his class was too hard.
Sure.
And I think
Too hard, really.
But this is college. College is supposed to be hard, right?
I can tell you from my experience, and now I was in liberal arts, so I was in communications, so I didn't feel like my college courses were a piece of cake. Even the hard ones weren't that difficult, because I grew up with like a really classical education. We would we rewrote the Constitution. We were writing 2 to 3 papers like a week. So we were doing Latin, very, very intense. So when I got into university, I was like, this ain't nothing. This is really,
you were
really
very
simple.
prepared.
I was very prepared, but that's kind of the point, is that you look at, where our school system is, not just in CMS, but everywhere, and they're not prepared. And so they get to those classes and they're just not ready. And I think the thing that's always going to be a threat, especially to like the institutions already there, which tends to be more leftist in general, is discipline. The idea of, you need to get somewhere by your merit. You have to work hard. You have to overcome your situation. But even to that, I'll kind of counter myself and say, we got to give kids some of the resources here. We got to give the community the resources to be able to do that if we can, without using, government handouts of like, oh, here, just take this. Like, give them the tools that they need to succeed.
Because we're not doing them any favors, like you just said, by lowering the standards.
Right.
We're actually hurting them.
We're
hurting them.
Yeah, and it's terrible, and it's so hard to watch. And two, one thing I've noticed, because I used to do tutoring in Charlotte for kids that were really struggling, and you could always just tell one of the things that really sucked. And one things maybe I want you to expand on a little bit is talking about the importance of community, where they're in these broken homes, or they're just in kind of a bad spot, where bringing community around them is really important.
Sure.
And I think that's a lost element in general.
No, and Jordan, I can't agree with you more, because when you feel you're part of a community, then it's an extension of family. And I think that's where we've lost our way. And I want to try and bring that back, and at least starting in District 1 and be the model or the pilot to show, for example, going back to Grand Oak and in line with my safety concerns. Parents have brought up that at the school, it's right off Stumptown in Huntersville. If you're in front of the school, which is parallel to the main street, there's 2 playgrounds to the right of it, if you're facing the school, that are just open, that the parents, in light of what happened with Uvalde, want to just better protect the kids. And so what did the parents try and suggest and introduce? A landscaping project where they can put big shrubs or bushes to hide the playground, because right now it's very open.
Yeah.
And so say you get a crazed gunman that wants to take a pot shot, or just some idiot kid that's got a shooting rifle or hunting rifle. At least make him a harder target. And that's just a tip of the iceberg that I want to do for every school, at least within my district, if not CMS. Based on my experience in the Air Force, I want to conduct these vulnerability studies to go ahead and address each and every safety loophole that might be found, either because we have a military veteran that's skilled and trained in this, or an actual professional looking at conducting vulnerability studies, which is what I did both in the U.S. and overseas. I want to apply that experience, because there's nothing bigger than the safety of our kids. But going back to your question and looking at how we're approaching trying to raise standards or improve conditions, it starts with community. And I think if both the parents and the students are involved, it's only a win-win situation. But that's where I think it also takes leadership to invite the community. And if you're not inviting the community and partnering with them, and more importantly, meeting with them, how do you expect to get that community involvement?
Yeah, and you're not going to get it with, a one-off email that you get from one of your superintendents or
you got to be visible.
Principal. You do, and I think that's a missing part altogether in society. I always bring it back to a large view of, we are kind of in a society we don't really see each other a ton.
Well, COVID obviously didn't help with that.
No, and it just kind of set us back, because we were already on that path.
Yeah, the internet started off.
Right. Like, it was social media, Facebook, for I guess the kids, 15, I guess. Instagrams, you have a daughter. Does she like Instagram? Is that like a thing or?
Instagram and Snapchat.
Okay, so I see a little eye roll. You're like,
Yeah, because I do old man's Facebook.
Yeah,
so.
I honestly, Facebook is my favorite.
You do.
Well, my kids do Instagram, and then I think from the time that I picked up my daughter to bring her to work, she did probably 1,000 selfies for Snapchat. I was just, what are you doing? Snapchat.
Yeah.
What are you doing? She has a Snapchat, Dad. Just leave me alone. So.
Oh wow! All right.
Yeah.
I think I got Snapchat when I was like 18, and I just didn't get into it. I'm kind of a little bit.
Tried it for a little while, and I was like, you know what? I'm tired of trying to come up with a face to take a picture to write a sentence and send it to somebody.
Yeah. It's just not.
I don't have that many faces, so they all look the same.
Connor has a pretty stone cold face, and I'm pretty. I'm pretty expressive. I have very expressive eyebrows.
Yeah, no, you do. You could ask my wife. I would just take pictures of whatever was in front of me and write a response. Like I was like, can we just text? Because I'm that's basically what I'm doing here. There's just a picture included every single time.
Yeah, offshoot there, but all to say that, with social media, with the internet in general.
And then with COVID.
Yeah, and then with COVID, visibility was not a thing. But actually, hang on. I do want to ask you a question just out of curiosity.
Sure.
Like, in regards to COVID, one thing I would say that was more visible is what teachers were doing.
Okay.
Because I feel like from what I heard from parents, we're not parents, so we wouldn't know. But what we heard is that there were some parents that were kind of appalled at what was being taught.
Yeah.
And they were just like, I've never seen this before. And it was all because of Zoom education, because guess what?
Yeah.
We're all in the same place.
Because the school got brought into the home. So they got to just kind of sit in on their kids' classrooms and see how the teacher taught or didn't teach.
Yeah.
I think that was maybe the exposure that might be a blessing in disguise.
That's what
run.
I was actually thinking, was that maybe it was a blessing in disguise because everyone knows about what happened in Virginia, like that absolute red wave where Glenn Youngkin just took the cake, and it was all because of what happened in Loudoun County, where the school board refused to have any sort of transparency about what had happened. So there's no real question here. It's just more of a conversation about, like, I don't know, like, what do you think about that, like, in general?
I think if there's any silver lining with COVID, it was exposing teachers of what was happening, because most times, myself included, you have no idea what's going on in the classroom. But at a very early age, and in both elementary and middle schools, to find out because you just happen to walk across or come across your child on a Zoom watching what's going on in class, and discovering either the books that they're reading or the things that they're learning in class, or the actual teachings by any particular teachers that might have been contrary to what the parent thought was happening. I think that exposed a lot for the better as far as informing parents, because at the end of the day, I think all parents want, and at least parents that are involved, want to know what's happening to their child. And you referenced Virginia. A movement was started there, and it's no different here as far as really looking at what are our kids learning, and is it appropriate, whether it's the books that are being taught. Because my daughter, she, to my amazement, last year during COVID, or on the tail end of it, she was reading this very controversial book. Now, my daughter's very mature, and we had a very mature conversation about it. And while I don't agree with the book being taught in English class, 9th grade English class, I appreciate, and thank goodness she had a very level-headed teacher that, whether or not it was her choice to teach it, the book, my daughter said she learned a lot and was able to take many things from the book. My question is it even appropriate? Because the book is called Girl Who Fell from the Sky.
Yes, this is one that I know a lot of moms are really concerned
because
about.
There's some very graphic scenes in there, and they talk about suicide. They talk about assault, and things that are just tough that I don't think. Are we trying to have our kids grow up that fast? Where they're having to address and be introduced to these topics at such a young age. Oh, but your child's 14. They should be a mini adult by then. I just think it's inappropriate because when you're taking that book and replacing the classics like To Kill a Mockingbird, those books that even you probably grew up with, why have they all of a sudden been replaced with this? And I just want to find out. And in line with that, I want to partner with the curriculum specialists that take their cues from the state as far as what is appropriate curriculum. Because I think I did this training for prospective school board members. And there's things that you can do or that you can't do. I'm just going to rip that up because I'm just going to address and attack everything that is concerning parents. And if I've been elected to try and represent parents and they've come to me with this concern, I'm going to find out. But I'm already getting a little pushback. Well, school board really doesn't deal with curriculum. It's the curriculum specialists that deal with that.
Well, what does the school? What would the school board do then?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm going to find out because whether it's not, there was a small success story by the current school board member, District 1, where they did remove that book from Huff, the very same school that a year before my daughter was reading it. Wow, a year later, my dumb luck. Yeah. But apparently, the book has been removed, and what I want to try to find out, what was the means of having that book removed from just that one school? But was it also connected that unfortunately the weekend before they made the decision, a student had an accidental overdose that immediately a knee-jerk reaction was it was a suicide, and it was a parent's worst nightmare. She took a pill that was laced with fentanyl. And one thing that I'm going to try and do is bring in awareness. If I have to partner with the DEA, bring in specialists to talk to our kids, don't experiment with drugs, and use this one unfortunate 14-year-old. She was a year behind my daughter, and the community was just grief-stricken. But right after that, this book was removed. Is it coincidence? Is it now all of a sudden they're realizing the ramifications of these type of graphic books being introduced to 14, 15-year-olds? Just recently, 2 weeks ago, there was a book, This Book is Gay, that was removed because a substitute teacher, not even reading the book, brought it into the class, and some of the students brought it to the parents, and the students were mortified. Mommy, look at what I'm reading. It not only talks about how to be gay, where to meet up with other gay people, and I just think that regardless of what your sexual preference is or not, that's not something you should be teaching in middle school. And actually, I don't think it was middle school. I think it was an elementary school. And you guys can look it up, but it was just shocking. And
we're looking at it right now.
This is happening on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's...
Why is this acceptable behavior? And I, for one, like I said, I'm going to start holding people accountable because the buck stops with me. And if I'm going to be one of 9 school board members with parents just begging for answers, then it starts with me. And that book just came up.
Yeah. It says something too just about what is a priority in our culture. That I think that's part of it where, why would you replace a book like To Kill a Mockingbird?
Sure.
Right? And replace it with something that has to do, with suicide and how to be gay. It's one thing to maybe have that sexual orientation, but you're right. It's like, no, we want you to be. And it's like, wait, what? Like,
sure.
Why is this?
It's forced learning of a subject matter that is, one, inappropriate for children that age, and the topics itself were age inappropriate. I just think that we are getting away. And okay, let's change the scenario here. If the school district didn't receive 50 of the schools received a school of DNF, and all the schools were C or better, and then the student outcomes were good, the third graders, whether in 2019 or 2021, were reading at a proficient level, then do anything you want. But right now, they're not cutting the mustard. So how can you justify introducing this when you can't even teach the ABCs? When over 60%.
We got to teach it, in a racially, equitable way.
Yep, pretty much.
That was a joke, by the way.
Really? Is there sarcasm allowed on this? Am I in the right place?
Yes. Yeah. that's the thing is like what you said in the beginning, I think is correct, where I don't think education should be politicized. Where I'm conservative, Connor's independent, technically.
Yeah, whatever I feel like.
Yeah, he's
based on
he's
the
not
way the wind's blowing.
Yeah, he's not gender fluid.
Basically.
He's politically fluid. You know, that's his thing. But I think regardless of your political affiliation, I think, well, let's just, teach math. Let's teach math, history. Okay, let's teach the facts of history. And I don't think there's anything wrong with maybe having an opinion, but you have to label it as an opinion.
I agree.
This is
totally
an
agree.
opinion. And, let's teach science for what it is. Let's just teach science. And I think to me that's not conservative. That's not liberal. I think it's just kind of common sense. But like I said, common sense is kind of going out the window a little bit. And I think it's causing CMS and a lot of other school districts and honestly our education system around the world, because I could have a whole conversation about the university system because I'm more in that world and you're not in that world. You're more in the K through 12, obviously. But the lack of common sense is sort of causing everyone to kind of go a bit crazy, and we can't think straight. And so for you, at least, with you running, I didn't even get to ask the question I wanted to ask in the very beginning of why you want to run. But I think throughout your answers here, you seem just to have a passion for it in general. But I think that this is a really big problem. But why? Let me just ask anyway. We'll ask anyway about what kind of caused you to want to run in the first place. Because there's a lot of issues that we have going on in the world. There's a lot of different stuff that's really important. But why this specific issue?
What was the trigger?
Thank you for that question. I've always had this call for public service. And whether it's when I started in grade school and I wanted to be the president of my class, and then my high school, I just wasn't cool enough to be voted. But then in college, I went to the Citadel. In my senior year, I became the vice president of my senior class. I've always had this affinity, and I think it came from my dad. My dad wanted to be in public office, and before he immigrated to the Philippines, he was an aspiring and up-and-coming lawyer that had a future in politics, whether starting as town mayor and who knows. But he followed my mom to America because she wanted to live the American dream, and she raised 4 kids. My dad had to raise the kids. My mom was a doctor, my dad was a lawyer, but he couldn't pass the bar because while my mom was continuing her education as a psychiatrist, my dad was watching 4 kids. All the while, he had this dream that he wanted to get into politics or he wanted to get into public service. And I think I'm living out his dream. Why school board? I was thinking of running for Congress in light of what happened in 2020, that the current district congresswoman ran unopposed, and I couldn't believe that. And there's a backstory that I don't want to waste any time here. Long story short, I tried to see if I could run for that vacant seat, but I couldn't. And so then I figured out how else can I help out. And so then 2022 was coming up. Maybe I'll run for Congress. But with the redistricting, that was terrible. That was illegal, violated the North Carolina Constitution. The actual district that I live in, it wasn't an attainable path based on the numbers. They just weren't in our favor. I mean, as far as registered Republicans, registered Democrats, and independents. I mean, it was 3-1 as far as the numbers, if you count both Democrats and independents versus Republicans. So what was the next best thing? State House, County Commission, there was a very strong chance. Because I have children in CMS, this speaks to me. And knowing that there's no more precious gift that we can give a child than a good education. And since I have one, and in light of the safety concerns, having a 16-year-old daughter that looks like she's 26, she hates me every time I say that, by the way, because it's true. There's been so many unreported sexual assaults and rapes from CMS, not just last year, but there's one school board meeting that over 40 victims came forward. And it made me cry because there's something going on here that these victims were not being properly given their due justice. They weren't even being given. There was just in last year where there was a assault by a student at Hawthorne Elementary or Hawthorne Middle. They sided with the assailant, and suspended the victim. How is that even proper? And in light of that, and looking at the 30 guns that were confiscated on CMS campuses, the number of unreported or underreported sexual assaults and rapes, having a daughter in CMS, looking at the great things that could happen in this beautiful city of Charlotte that we live in, that if you actually ask people to be honest with you, they wouldn't send their child to CMS. But because of financial circumstances, they can't. And since there's no school choice, the district you live in is where you're going to go. Mm-hmm. I felt that I could have an impact. And instead of running and maybe winning one of the districts, the current state board or state house representative in my district, good friend of mine, I'm not going to run for that. County commission didn't speak to me because it's dealing with the whole county and there's a lot of issues that are going on. School board, I think from day one, I could have an immediate impact. But more importantly, I can connect with parents that just want a voice. They want to have an advocate. And if I have to be their blowhorn, if I have to be the one to try and take the mantle after the current school board member that's been in the seat for 13 years, 13 years, I call her the Nancy Pelosi of school board, because 13 years, thank you for your service. And on 3 different occasions, she said she wasn't going to run. But now she is, the day before.
Yeah, do you have any idea why? Because I was reading that myself, and I was like, well...
I've got unfinished business, or I want to continue the work that I'm doing. Personally, I think it's other things that I won't mention. But with respect to, because I try to keep it clean, I don't want to... I've been attacked. I'm not going to do the attacking. What I will say is 13 years is long enough, and when your record can't really show a performance or a history of success, I think it's time. And parents are begging for it. And it's only because she didn't have any really strong opposition. And but now that's changed. And so instead of just me versus her, there's 5 candidates.
Which is pretty dang incredible, to be honest, that 5 people.
For school board.
Yeah.
For this one district. And everybody asks, how many seats are open for that district? Just one.
Just one.
And you can't have a more diverse group.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Because that says enough right there that you'd have people that are like, this person that's been in there for 13 years is able to just, she's like, oh crap, they're coming after us now, and realizing, maybe she's not, again, if you're in there for 13 years and, the school's kind of going under, you kind of have to ask, what's been done
Correct.
in those 13 years.
Correct.
It's a reasonable question.
That's all.
That I think
and
every parent can ask, and every taxpayer should be asking.
Yeah.
Should definitely be able to ask.
And more importantly, when you get in, what I'm running on is accountability and transparency, accessibility, returning phone calls, emails, being able to connect, not just on the school level, but on the community level. That's where I think I can thrive. That's where I think I can excel, because I'm a people person. But more importantly, I want to be a listener. And make no mistake about it, I've never been short on words, and but I want to go on a listening tour. The moment starting now, but the moment I take that oath, if there is one for school board, whatever the case is, the moment I start, I want to go and reach out to every school. I want to have town halls. I want to talk to the families. I want to go ahead and have them tell me what are their concerns. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned with these books? Are you concerned with the education standards, the lowering of the standards? Are you concerned with the resources? Are you concerned with the lack of teachers? Are you concerned with the lack of school bus drivers? Anything and everything. Do you want more sports? Do you want more, fine arts? All those things and everything. And then take those concerns and create these task forces and come up with solutions from the community, from people that are going to roll up their sleeves and partner with me. So then I can take it back to my fellow board members. This is not the Lawsin show. This is one town, one team, where we're locking arms and coming up. And these aren't just people just off the street. These are PhDs, retired teachers, business leaders, military, law enforcement, all of us addressing all the chronic needs that are currently going on with CMS, safety, student outcomes, budget, student reassignment that's about to come up. All these things, I really believe, starts with the community. And this community is begging for a leader that's not going to be arrogant and dismissive and rude, but instead the actually opposite, humble, consistently available, being there to just listen and then take their concerns and see. And maybe there's nothing that I can do, but at least listening to them. Because at the end of the day, whether you're a child or an adult, everybody just wants to be heard. And I think this school district for the longest time is just trying to get someone to listen to them and to hear their concerns. And that's why I'm running, and that was the catalyst.
You've mentioned security quite a few times here, and I think you brought it up about, was it Grand Oak Elementary, which I think I pulled up on a map here. But where are you at with the security in Charlotte with these schools?
I think it needs to be a top-to-bottom assessment and doing these vulnerability studies, because if everything that's in place is great, I don't want another Uvalde. Nobody does.
No, nobody does.
But just to think that who would ever thought Uvalde would happen? I've never even heard of it. So do we want Huntersville to be on the map? Are we that arrogant to not go ahead and at least take the necessary steps to identify? Because from what I understand about that, it was an unlocked door. And that's all it takes. That's all it takes from a crazed madman. And so then Huntersville, Cornelius, Davidson, or another school in Charlotte becomes national news. I believe we on the school board and anybody dealing with the safety and security of our students and teachers should take it upon themselves to do everything that they possibly can to ensure the safety of our students and teachers. And that's what I want to do, because I just think it's that serious. And that's why it's my number one concern. Because if parents can't send their kids knowing that they're safe, much less getting a good education, let's take care of the safety first. Then maybe they'll start relying and hoping that their teachers are going to give them in the school a good education. But if they're not even safe, do you think they want to send them with all this craziness going on in our world? What makes you think that CMS is not vulnerable or exempt or immune? I don't. And since security, being in the Air Force was my specialty, I want to use that. Because that's why you get people, oh, okay, well, we need to get another school teacher on the school board. Really? Do you want to get another when you've got so many administrators that are former teachers themselves? I just think you need people that are going to be vested. Am I vested? Yes, because I have 3 kids. And there's many people that are running that have kids either went through the system or currently in it. But I want to apply my experience to my number one issue, and I have not wavered from the beginning. Safety and the security of our students and teachers is my number one concern, and that's how I would do it.
So vulnerability inspections of the schools, I'm guessing all the schools from top
all
to bottom.
All the schools, elementary to high school, top to bottom. Do you realize besides at Grand Oak, I keep using them, but this is a perfect example, there's no elementary school requires a student resource officer, because who's going to really cause trouble from K through 5? That's probably what the thinking is. But even more egregious at Grand Oak is there's only 2 male administrators or faculty, principal, Mr. G, and either a Spanish teacher, I forgot his last name, but that's it. Every other, and not to say that female teachers can't protect and defend the students, but it is optics. If you know for a fact that there's only 2 male bodies at a school, isn't that a vulnerability in itself? Combined with no student resource officer? Are we just being that arrogant to not address that? Combined with the immediate threat of those playgrounds that are just open without any protection, no hindrance, no barriers. These things, again, are very simple and not as complex, and with very even simpler solutions.
Was it these playgrounds here that you're talking about?
Yes.
Yep.
Look at that.
They're not the only school like that either.
No. Move up, because the other way. It's the one right there. So look at the end of the building. There's 2 playgrounds right there.
Oh, is it what those little green umbrellas are?
The green, right there.
Yeah,
so
that's right off of a main road.
Okay.
Of a main road.
That one right there and right there. And the kids are there all the time. Do you see any bushes? Do you see any protective things? Nothing. And there's not even gates.
Nope.
Well,
but
also,
someone can take that road. And so parents, this isn't me bringing this up. This parents told me that they will fund this right there. You can see it right there.
Yep. Easily hoppable.
Yeah, and
fence.
honestly,
not even hoppable. What if you got a high-powered rifle and you just take a shot with a scope? And again,
Yeah.
this might seem extreme, but guess what? Look at the books that we're introducing in our schools. That's extreme. This is not extreme, but I might be an alarmist for bringing this up. But it's not, because guess what?
For bringing up, making the playgrounds a little bit more
secure.
Yeah, no, I feel like for any,
I think his profession plays into this quite a bit.
Yes.
Is that you're thinking ahead of time. You want to.
I want to be
secure it
proactive,
beforehand. Not
and
reactive.
if it's going to cost pennies on the dollar versus the ramifications of not doing something like this, I don't even want to think about it. And especially come back and Monday morning quarterback this. And what if? The what if is right now. And I want to apply that when I'm elected to school board to each and everything, whether student outcomes, getting teachers to stay and retain them, looking at trying to get qualified school bus drivers, making sure the schools are safe, trying to reduce the amount of violence that's going on, and partnering with these veterans and introducing these programs that aren't just going to yell at them, but give them hope and inspire them that there's another path that they can take instead of trying to be the disruptor and the troublemaker. Because I'm not just going to write off kids. That's the easy thing to do. And on the flip side, I'm not just going to advance them for the sake of advancing. That's the easy thing to do. But we've come to a place in our society where let's just go along to get along. Let's just make things easy and then worry about it later. Well, later's here right now. So.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the thing again that I just keep thinking is there's a certain level of just common sense of like even looking at, and our viewers will be able to see what's on the screen there. But we just looked at of these are you're not even just looking at a like a shooter situation. Like as a parent, you think, well, my kid could run off, or what if there's 20 kids on a playground and the teachers can't all see them?
And it sounds like no, that can't happen. But look at our society on everything that's happened, and never in a million years would you ever thought that would happen, but it did. And so I want to take that out of the equation, because then call me an alarmist. I want to apply the things that I've learned that I've done while I was in the Air Force. And since security was my specialty, again, I can't think of anything more important than making our students and our teachers safe. And that's one of it. And that's just proof right there. There's a vulnerability. It's been identified, guess what? Not by me, by concerned parents. And so they're ready to go ahead and fundraise to pay for the landscaping to just make it a harder target. But they're getting pushback.
Which is crazy.
It is crazy.
Because I think that, if you are able, say, and this is all hypothetical, but
I can talk forever. Reason why I'm checking my phone is because my daughter, so we can talk forever.
Oh, yeah, no, I figured.
Her mom's going to pick it.
No, I figured that you were checking your phone
Make sure
because
she's
of
getting
your
picked up.
daughter.
Yes,
so.
because I've already had enough battles with my daughter, and so hopefully her mom will pick her up. So
that's okay.
Now
That's kind of what I figured you were doing.
That's
so
all
like,
I'm doing.
Yeah,
I apologize if I didn't mean to be rude.
No, you're fine.
We can talk forever.
Yeah.
So.
No, I can tell. So
can I get some more water?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can get some more water. So I think what I was gonna say before I lost my train of thought. Hang on, I have to get it back because I was.
And
thinking
I think this is
something.
amazing. You're doing
this
without notes. This is just amazing.
Well, we aim to impress.
Yes.
So anyway,
and I'm here to just lay on the compliments. Remember, that's my job. we talked about this.
That's
Jordan.
it. That's the
yes,
job.
We love it. Okay. But in regards, this is a big hypothetical. But say that you do this audit and you realize there's a ton of money that's being wastefully used, and you say, well, why don't we reallocate funds to actually using it for security, and making sure that that doors are locked. And also, I know there can be different policies on how you train teachers, but actually because I work in an education space where we had a shooting, and so we couldn't force people to actually do training, which was unfortunate, but maybe in a school system like this, you can. I'm not sure about the legal ramifications. But actually teaching them like, hey, you got to keep the door locked, or we got to reinforce some areas, things along those lines. Again, I'm just putting stuff out there. You're more of the expert in this situation. But I think the thing I do like is the idea of being proactive, which I think sometimes what happens with conservatives is that I think this is a critique on conservatives, is that we kind of wait till the last minute to do
Sure.
to do something.
And I want to change that.
Yeah,
I want to change that. And
it's kind of annoying, and I'm one of them too, where I'm just like, wait a minute, transgenderism? Wait a minute, where did this come from? Why didn't we stop this sooner?
Correct.
But
because
that's an
it's
issue.
more of knee-jerk reaction, and I don't want to be the knee-jerk that all of a sudden we've got a major catastrophe on our hands. Because again, to think that it won't happen in Huntersville, Cornelius, or Davidson, it happened in Uvalde. And who would have ever thought Uvalde would become world famous?
Yeah,
And
never.
It's a small little town.
It's a small little town,
small
just like
town.
Sleepy Hollow, Huntersville, even though it's not Sleepy Hollow anymore. I mean, my gosh, look at the traffic on 73. But
Yeah,
with
that's
respect to
fair,
that, and
that's
again, one thing I appreciate what you're saying, Court Jordan, is in that I if I had a PhD, it would be in common sense. Just because I tried to live my life thinking, does this pass the smell test? That's it. It's as simple as that. But people want to argue over common sense solutions that I just think has brought us to where we are, not just locally, not just statewide, but nationally, where common sense should be the call to order, but it's not. And we overcomplicate things. And that's why I want to break it down in something as simple, an audit of where the money's going so that parents can know. And then you brought about reallocating to security, or at least funding those security needs. I want to reallocate it to, say, some of those programs that are doing very well and maybe might not need as much funding. Let's take some of that funding to those programs that aren't, but then apply those principles and lessons that are being applied to those succeeding schools to those underperforming schools, and have a partnership and create some type of cooperation or joint programs where we're learning to, because why can't we learn from our fellow colleagues, in terms of best practices? I just think it makes sense that if someone's doing it right and someone's not, why don't we draw and ask and find out? And CMS has been good about that. Last year, there was 2 schools that got a grade of A. And I want to talk to those principals.
Yeah.
And I think every principal should be talking to those principals.
Yeah.
Because they are setting the standard. And because guess what? The standard's high. But most schools, the standard's low. And they're just getting by. And when you continue to get by, it gets worse. Just recently, in fact, today, Sheriff Gary McFadden, I don't know if you heard on the news, but Charlotte
Nope,
is
not yet.
Well, Charlotte's going to stop arresting.
Oh, yes, I did hear this.
Arresting for
I haven't
minor
heard this yet.
minor
So he'll need to
infractions.
know.
So basically, Sheriff McFadden is going to have the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office not enforce or penalize, if not cite any those from anybody, but mostly targeting the African American community, that if they have an expired license plate, only 8 miles over the speed limit, or these minor offenses, so don't even bother with them. The problem with that is then you expand on it, because if they think they can get away with this, let's try something else,
Right.
and push the envelope. And that's where the problems, and that's where we've gotten with CMS, that we've lowered the standards, and then if it's not meeting what our needs are, not necessarily the students' needs, let's lower it even more. So how's that helping anybody? And that's where it gets to society applying these norms that are way below standards, and just everybody getting along with it. And certainly not passing any kind of smell test that how are we preparing kids for the future to be either college ready or career ready, much less advancing them to the next grade, knowing that they're just going to struggle and fail. And no different than in society. Let's just go ahead and have someone continually break the speed limit, thinking they're not going to get caught, they're not going to get penalized. Well, let me instead try to go 20 miles above the speed limit. But then that 20 miles kills someone. It is a trickle-down effect or a snowball effect. This is no different than education. It's happening, and the numbers speak to that. Over 60% of third graders, just in general, aren't reading at a third grade proficient level in third grade.
Across the United States or here in Charlotte?
Here in Charlotte.
Okay, right. Okay.
Make no mistake on it. I'm pointing to Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, CMS, and that's it. Because guess what? I can't control what happens outside in Union, Cabarrus, Iredell, Gaston, but what I can control is CMS, and that's going to be my number one focus. But I'm going to be driven to try and partner with the community, because guess what? There's a lot more smarter people out there than me that have done this, that can help in expertise, and that we join arms, lock arms, because I think they've got a lot of ideas. And if we can take, because right now they're already doing it, which is a step in the right direction. They're going to reach out to the community in search of the new CMS superintendent. And I'm all for that. Let's make sure that everybody's included, not just certain districts or not just certain demographics. Everybody's got a say. And then we take all the data and then sort it out and assess it and then come up based on the community input from all parts of the county to find this new superintendent as a result of an exhaustive nationwide search. That's how we're going to find our new superintendent, because that question is often asked. What would you like to find in the qualities of a new superintendent? Oh, of course, experience and, proven track record, blah, blah, blah. And not just checking off a box or a square to meet whatever needs or quotas or what have you. I want the most qualified person. I could care less about race, religion, or sex, because that's the most qualified person to steer the ship in the right direction, because right now it's a sinking ship. But it's going to happen only when we can partner with the community. So
yeah, no, the community aspect, as we have discussed, is important. And I think, again, when we talk about the low expectations, I cannot stress enough, we do as much as we can in the school system. I think that's going to be very important. And the community aspect is going to be very important. But I do know that some of the things I think with implementing programs is that you are implementing, to a certain extent, a culture change that says, yeah, you are responsible for your decisions and you have to work hard, and the bar is going to be raised, and it's not going to feel good, but it's going to be what's best for you. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I feel like America has really fallen down on. And there's always this stuff about race that I find very interesting. And specifically what I found with at least Asian Americans is that they work off of meritocracy. Mm-hmm. This idea that, there's pretty much no excuses, no BS, nope. You work hard to get where you are. Well, when we implemented the idea of affirmative action, that was kind of almost the starting of this snowball effect of, sure. Well, we can, if they're, having certain issues, maybe we bring it down. Well, if they're a certain race, maybe we bring down the expectation. And in reality, it's very insulting towards those races. It's
insulting, and you're only doing more damage than good.
You are. No, but they don't believe that, because there is this level of victimhood. A victimhood culture is what I tend to call it. I don't know what you call it, but that's what I call it.
I think that's the right term for it.
Yeah, of this victimhood culture, where I think when you start, I think even bringing in veterans, I think is really interesting to me, because everyone has and now it's starting to change because the political climate's gotten really nasty, but people still, even if you're in the presence of a veteran, mm-hmm. there is a certain level of respect that you have and understanding. It's we thank mm-hmm. you for your service. We're very happy that you've served us for 21 years, and now you're using those skills and you're going to try to serve us in another aspect. Mm-hmm. And so even regardless of your political affiliation, there is that. And so I even think bringing that in front of children's whoa, that's hard work. How do you do that? And
sure.
And so not just telling them, be disciplined, be this, you're just showing them.
Sure.
Which is far different than just telling mm-hmm. them.
Well, and I think you're spot on, Jordan, as far as looking at, I pride myself on being a resourceful guy, and whatever I need to do to try and find whatever tools or resources to try and achieve objective, accomplish a goal, then I'm going to do it. And I think there is a gold mine of service from our veterans that we can use, that many of them have either been out of the military for some time, trying to find some direction in their life, like this gentleman that he's currently working with Shining Hope Farms. You can look it up. But
I think I know. I know Shining Hope Farms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shining Hope Farms.
You might not.
He's working with it. Anyways, it helps with disabled kids and through equine therapy. And we met him through one of my clubs that I'm associated with, the Republican Patriots. We sponsored him. Actually became a foster to his, or a sponsor for him to be able to continue working there. It was like a minimal donation, but it was the gesture. And then having the privilege of meeting him, he was at one of my fundraisers just recently, and you can't mistake the guy. The guy is 6'5". I mean, he is.
So he's big.
He is an impressive individual. And when you hear him talk, the passion, I thought I was passionate. Holy smokes. You know, I feel very minuscule, both in size and in stature and in the things. But my point there is, imagine getting him in front of troubled kids to try and not so much scare the living bejesus out of them, but just to bring some reality to that. There's nothing that this guy hasn't seen that you think you have, but you know better, you know? And no different than many of these teachers and people in the community that, while they're experts here in CMS, think that they're doing it. Well, great. The record and the results speak for itself. So I think we need to do something different. So that's why I'm going to pull on the community and be an example that I'm going to have, like, for better words, a casting call. If budget is your thing and you happen to be an accountant or in finance or safety because of your military experience, or you might just been in law enforcement, or with regards to curriculum and you're a teacher, a PhD, help me in that effort so that then these teachers and curriculum specialists are getting a different perspective that's coming straight from the community. Again, this is not the Lawsin show. I'm going to make this a joint effort and prove it on day one. And I'm already telling people, I've got a list of people to include this veteran, to include a couple PhDs, to include some business leaders. You're going to be on my team, whether you like it or not. But if you definitely volunteer, you're on the team. And just use this. And it's nothing that's earth-shattering. It's not like this hasn't been done before. It's not like schools have tried to reach out to communities. But I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to do it. And hopefully come up with common sense solutions and be results-driven. And that's it. It's not rocket science.
No, it's not rocket science. It definitely, it'll definitely be hard for sure, because you're. But
doesn't mean I can't do it.
Oh yeah, no. I'm definitely not saying you can't, but definitely just being like realistic, being like,
sure,
it is going to be hard, and you're willing to do that.
Sure. That's why people are resonating, and I'm connecting with them because they like what they hear. And I put it out there on my number 3 thing on the back of my palm card. It says accountability and transparency.
Look at your card.
Yeah, right there, and it's out there. And I've been staying with that. And it starts with me. Because I know there's a lot of elected officials, especially on the school board, that don't hold themselves accountable and aren't transparent. Well, and I'm also trying to set example for my kids. Mm-hmm. And that's why I pride myself. You see the videos of Lance. But that started from starting at a very early age. Yeah, no. But with respect to anything and everything that I do it to try and first and foremost be a good example for my kids and show that there's a right way of doing things. There's no gray with right, doing something right or not doing something right. There's no gray, I don't believe, because that's where we've gotten lost, to try and mix in that, maybe starting off with a 50 in CMS schools and not having to show up to class, that's okay, but we'll still advance you. How is that right? How is that good for any student? And so I certainly, yes, it's going to be hard, Jordan, of raising the standards, but it starts with one person, one student, one parent, and then it grows, and we make them believe. Because all you need in life is belief. And if you can instill belief in people, especially students, imagine the things that they and we can do together. That's all I want to do. I don't want to overcomplicate things. I don't want to make it, bogged down in all these bureaucratic processes and policies and things that, you just can't do this because of that's the way we've done it. I'm sorry. If there is a manual, I'm just going to totally ignore it and go on based on the needs of the people in my district and especially of CMS, because there's a lot to fix. And yes, it's going to be hard. But if I didn't think that it was achievable or attainable, knowing full well I can't do it by myself, I am making an open call for help. And people are stepping up because they believe that together we can do it. You know what also motivates me? 2 things. Just recently, and then one beforehand, I was at a meeting with some people that just wanted to get off their couch. She actually saw me, the lady of the house They both happen to be Asian. Yay! She's half Filipino. Her husband's Japanese, and she went to the Salt and Light conference. And she says, I want to get involved. And it was her first time ever attending. She lives in Huntersville. It got out to certain people within the party. This Asian woman that wants to get involved. She wants to help a candidate. Guess what? Lawson's in Huntersville. So long story short, I had dinner at their house on Sunday. Mm-hmm. She has a 93-year-old mom that was there listening, along with other friends that want to get involved, both from Mecklenburg County, Cabarrus County. At the end of the evening, because they all asked how they can help. And of course, 93-year-old mom, her name's Loretta, she can't help knock on doors. She doesn't want to make phone calls. So what did she do? She wrote me a $500 check. I couldn't believe that. And then rewind about 2.5 months ago, a good friend of mine, she's with the Susan B. Anthony list. Mm-hmm. She just moved from Iredell County, her and her husband and her 3-year-old daughter, to Mecklenburg, knowing that Iredell might be a little bit better, knowing that the schools might be a little bit stronger. But when she came and told me that, they made the decision, because they could have moved anywhere, but she moved to Mecklenburg County. She told me, Ro, when my 3-year-old is ready to go to CMS schools, we're betting on you that you're going to fix this. And I couldn't be any more touched, humbled, and motivated to try and do something so that these two parents of this beautiful 3-year-old have that confidence in me that I'm going to turn this around. So those two things motivate me. They get me up in the morning, that I know it's going to be a grind, and I know I'm going to get attacked, and I know I'm going to get pushed back. But guess what? It's worth the fight. And that's why I'm doing it. So
I think that's a fantastic answer. And it's especially hopeful because right now the current generation is not doing particularly well in schools. COVID didn't help that. And there will be future generations that come to these schools. But these schools are in a condition because the current generation of parents and the past generation took a step back, let the government take over, mm-hmm. and have just run the schools downwards. So I think you're right when you say that this is like the year of the parents. This is where they've had enough. COVID gave them that peek into schools through Zoom or whatnot, and seeing the community get involved again and want to get involved is mm-hmm. exactly what we need moving forward. As we became too segregated from the internet, mm-hmm. And I remember growing up and having block parties and knowing my neighbors and
sure.
the local.
Going back to Jordan, community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we've lost that.
Yeah, completely lost.
And I want to bring it back. One family, one parent, one student at a time. And if I can try and give them some belief, because that's all it takes. Mm-hmm. And just think of what we can do. Look at what you guys are doing here. This started out as a dream, and you might have done it just on your cell phones. And if I can help in this endeavor, I'm going to, because this is fantastic. And when I got the seal of approval or vote from Carrie, I just like, tell me where to be and I'll be there. Mm-hmm. And then I talked with you, Jordan, and I just can't be more impressed. But it takes patriots like you to try and set the record straight and just talk the truth. And what I'm talking about is nothing. I may not be the smartest guy and come up with all these scientific facts and data. What I try to pull off is what is the most pressing need. And those 3 things, I firmly believe, based on consultation with many parents and teachers and those in the community, are the most pressing. Are there probably 20 other things I could address? Oh, heck yeah. But those 3, and I'm going to stay on point and not try and get distracted. And then once I'm in office, gloves are coming off. And I'm going to try and uncover and expose and find out why are we continuing to perform at this dismal level. Because to think otherwise that this is appropriate, if not acceptable, then you are certainly lying to, if you're in this position, to your constituents, putting on a false front and just lying about where we stand as a school district. And that's why I'm doing it, because I think together as community, and partnering with the people that want to see a change, we can do it. But, if I didn't believe that I had the means to do it, I wouldn't be here with you now. I just wouldn't, because a lot of people ask, why school board? Even Pete Callender, he goes, there was told that there was someone that was on city council and then decided to run a school board, and his daughter said, Dad, don't you know people hate the school board? You know,
well, might not be wrong.
Yeah, I don't think they are. I don't think they are, and I don't think. But nothing ventured, nothing gained, and anything worth fighting for is never going to be easy. And if we don't draw a line in the sand right now, imagine how much more damage we're going to continue to do. And the numbers aren't in a favor as far as the makeup of the board, but that's okay, because I really want to work with my fellow board members. And the current school board member boasts about being collaborative and working with her colleagues. Yes, and voting for the wrong reasons and never taking a stand and going along to get along. Mm-hmm. I'm not. But just because I'm on the different side of a opinion that my colleagues may not, maybe I can try and work harder to show them why I'm fighting for this, and maybe get them to realize, oh, that makes sense. Going back to common sense, because I think that's where we've lost our way.
Yeah, and you have sorry, you want to go ahead?
No, you're good.
A real very, very quick, I think, too, you have, with being on that school board, you might not have everyone in your favor, but there is something about personal interaction that can change things.
Sure.
And, you are running on a sense of, let's just take school safety, all right? Mm-hmm. That's something that we all have a vested interest in. Everyone has a vested interest in this. It's like, okay, what is it really going to hurt if we try to reallocate funds?
Correct. And if they don't, then you know where they stand.
Right. And
you get exposed very quickly.
And that can also lead into another election. So it might not all happen within that first, couple years. It might not, but it's a slow progression of showing hey, maybe we change some things. Maybe we change who's on this board.
And to your point, it's got to start somewhere.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. It does take one person.
And if I be the torchbearer, then so be it. I don't want to be in front. I mean, this doesn't need to be on camera. I happen to be on camera now. Great. With respect to being behind the scenes, I'm more than happy to try and do the work for the people, servant leadership, because there is a desperate need for leadership. And that's where I thrive. I like being challenged, and there's no bigger challenge than trying to redirect this sinking ship that is called CMS, that I wish we weren't talking about it. I wish I wasn't having to run. Just go on with my life and not go through the past 6 months that would discourage anybody from running. But you'd have to, no different than teaching, because let's make no bones about it. Teachers are doing it because of a calling. They certainly aren't doing it for financial gain. Mm-hmm. And that's why they deserve our appreciation and our respect. And I'm going to fight for teachers, because without teachers, we don't have schools. And it's got to be a coordinated and joint effort. One thing that's always kind of brushed under the carpet, the parents' role. And you touched on it earlier. Parents have to be held accountable too. And so whatever I can do to try and get them more engaged, and not just attending a monthly PTSA meeting and kind of hearing what the teachers are talking about, but getting involved with your school, and more importantly, having that outreach. And if it starts with me as a school board member and have spin-offs from there, either through my task forces or something from each respective school, then let's do it. But whatever's working right now, with the exception of some of those stellar schools that are performing above and beyond, let's find out why it's happening and come up with common sense solutions and partner with these experts that might have a better solution than what's currently happening now.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what were you going to say, Connor, before I interrupted you?
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Nope, I have nothing. You go ahead.
You've got nothing? Okay.
Nope.
Ro, I just wanted to say, as we're coming up to the election, we're right around a month out from this.
November 8th, and actually early voting starts October 20th.
Okay, there we go.
15 days away.
There you go, everybody. So, what would you say to the audience, to the people that are going to be watching or listening to this? What would be your closing comments with the election in mind, keeping in mind that it's only a month away at this point?
If you really have need for change, and you're looking for someone that wants to be that instrument of change, positive change, and that's going to impact, and at the same time be accountable, then just take a look at why I'm running and find other candidates that want to be that instrument of change, and starting with themselves, hold themselves accountable, and be solutions oriented, standing on principle, not just on belief. And more importantly, just get to know the candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Get to know them. And because let's be honest, most voters are uneducated. And whether they just vote for party or they vote based on, okay, well, I think I know this person, but I don't know why they're, what issues they're running on. Right. You guys did your homework with me, and I'm glad you did, because I want them and every person to learn about what Roe Lawson's about. And I'm going to be as transparent as possible. But at the same time, if you're looking for that leader, that fighter that's going to go in the trenches and represent you, the community, who's our number one customer each and every day, then what do you have to lose on voting for me and having me represent you, especially considering the current representative has been in the seat for 13 years. I think it's time for a change. And I think that I bring the experience, both professionally and militarily. I've got a vested interest with 3 kids, 2 that just recently graduated. More importantly, I'm trying to do this because I think that the community is looking for a change, and they want someone to represent them much better than they have been. And if there's any way that I can share my message with them as a result of this, and they can see why I'm doing this, and because you guys didn't hold back, I truly appreciate you being very candid, and that's all I can be. And I try to do it in a respectful and dignified manner, because there's no reason why we can't have these conversations. That's the problem that I think we're facing, not just locally, but nationally. We're doing a lot of this, instead of talking. And I will even put a muzzle on myself to just have conversations with people from different points of view. But so at least we're talking, because right now we're not having these conversations. Even in the highest offices, they don't even debate anymore. We've lost that, and it trickles down. Where are we going to be as a country? Where are we going to be as a community? So I think that if I can kind of be that example to try and get back to some common sense, some decency of treating people with respect, from our teachers to even our students, because there was something that we talked about when COVID happened. What did we find out? We found out what teachers were doing unbeknownst to the parents. Well, right now CMS is trying to administer a no cell phone policy, where once they go into this class, they're going to take away their phones. Well, now you're treating them like kids. And then more importantly, I think it's a CYA thing, so that now if a teacher acts out or inappropriately or does something, they won't be caught, because there's no video cameras in the classrooms, and students won't be able to pull out their phones because they record everything.
That's actually interesting that you say that, because I was almost ready to disagree with you, where I was like, originally when you were talking, I was like, wait a minute.
And I was on that side too, until I thought about it.
Well, because I was like, because my initial thought is, okay, we just talked about social media. Mm-hmm. Kids are on their phones.
I totally agree.
Constantly.
I totally agree.
So either, to me, it's got to be, okay, if you get rid of cell phones, okay, what about if you get rid of the cell phones, replace with video cameras in the classroom? Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's what they're trying to do.
No, they're not.
Yeah, and so now when you said that, I was
because
like,
it's too expensive.
Yeah, and which is, I guess, is understandable. I could see that. But once you started talking, I'm like, okay, because that means that you're removing a certain level of accountability. Because this is where, and I would have to get your thoughts on this, from both of you guys, about teachers, where I talk to teachers, I have teacher friends. They are wonderful people who obviously love what they do, right? But the teachers that we see online are crazy. Mm-hmm. They're crazy. Mm-hmm. They're insane, and they have these books, and they have the all this sexual indoctrination material and graphics all around their classroom. Mm-hmm. And so it's like that weird balance of saying, hey, teachers, we appreciate you, but there still needs to be some level of accountability, which is crazy that I even that you'd even have to have that conversation of, yeah, you can't sexually indoctrinate kids.
Sure.
You can maybe teach them about biology in science class, which is perfectly normal and fine.
appropriate.
It's appropriate, yeah, because, you know, in regards, children don't listen to this, but like how sex happens and how children are made. That is a biological thing. That is not a sexual like indoctrination. That's just how it happens. You know, if you don't like it, that's fine. But I don't know. That was just something that I get really torn on really quickly. And I still haven't landed 100% on how I feel.
And I do too, but I just know that, one, if you want to try and teach this, or treat the students like adults, especially in high school, then have a one strike, two strike type of, if they have caught with their phone on their Snapchat or their Instagram, take it away, and for just that class, and then you can do it again, and then just continue. And if they are repeat offenders, then you have a cause for removal. But to just punish everybody,
I think that's fair.
And because I was all for stick it in a basket, because all they're doing is, but then start treating them. But that's where you set the standards high. Once you come in my class, you guys are learning. And now if there's an emergency, so there's a shooter in the school, then at least your child as a parent will be able to contact you, versus having to go through it, you know, in a panic, trying to find a phone in 40 students. They'll have it on them. But on the flip side, if there's a rogue teacher doing some crazy things that you and I both know are happening in our schools, then they're going to be held accountable. And then on the flip side, all those great teachers that are doing a great job, they have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, no, I think you make a valid point there.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. And it kind of reminds me of the conversation that Eric Weinstein had with what's his name from Project Veritas? I'm blanking on his name
James
right
O'Keefe?
now. James O'Keefe.
Yeah.
So went on a podcast, and Eric Weinstein he did not like the idea of people being secretly filmed. He liked the idea better. I didn't understand why. He liked the idea better of a reporter coming in, having an interview with you, and then writing about it, which they can write whatever they want.
That's what people do anyways, and everyone always poses themselves for a reporter.
That's my point. And
Correct.
it's like,
and they're never speaking the truth.
Yeah. And
No,
to
they have
O'Keefe's
lines.
point, and
But
I would
I
say
did,
it's the same.
unfortunately. I told the truth like an idiot. Never again.
Poor Roe.
Yeah, but I think O'Keefe's point was, if you're not doing anything wrong or saying anything you shouldn't, then you've got nothing to worry about.
Sure.
And if you're afraid of being filmed, you know, secretly, then there is something that you're trying to hide, and then we maybe we're just going to go ahead and go with the cameras anyways. But yeah, so for teachers that are not doing that type of stuff, they're not going to care.
No, they're not.
They will be fine with it either way.
And
for
more
the
importantly,
students,
if they've implemented a level of discipline and control that starts from the beginning. I bring the example of my boys that is easily with twins, because like, I can't believe you had twins. But when you start out tough and hard, you can have tough love and be hard on your kids and still love them. You know, and you can be tough and hard on your students and still love them, instead of just letting them, you know, run amok and control your class, and then you become dissentful or disgusted or just totally fed up because, one, nobody's got your back, and they might be taken out because they got in a fight, but then they come back and they do it again and do it again. What is a teacher supposed to do? And especially if it's a minute, 5'0" female teacher, and you've got this big, whether black, white, Hispanic, Asian, I don't care. Kids nowadays, oh my gosh, what are they eating? They're huge, and how is she supposed to defend herself when someone's going to be dropping F-bombs? I think you talked about a culture change. Why not? Why can't we get back where kids are behaving and being civil? But part of that equation is parents. They have a role in this too.
It's a huge part of the equation.
It's a huge part. And I'm not going to try and tiptoe around it because I'm a parent myself. But I'm not going to call out parents, but I will make them aware. You have just as much of a role in this. And to think that you're going to let a teacher parent your child? Oh, come on.
It's not even if it's the best teacher in the world.
Correct. That's not their job.
They can't, and there's also 20 kids in a classroom.
Correct.
Like, that's just not what they're supposed to, that's not what they're supposed to do.
It's not their job.
No, let the teachers, the teachers are there to teach. Don't make them teach your children how to behave.
And Connor, how simple is that concept?
Apparently very difficult.
How simple is that? Just let them teach. And I want to get back to that. And I think I can. And to your point, Jordan, it's going to be a slow progress, but you got to start somewhere. And if I raise these standards now and have very high, people will come on board because they know it's going to lead to success. But if we continue to kick this can down the road, it's only going to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you might not come out as hard on parents, in regards to your campaign. I come at parents super hard, like ridiculously hard. And I can
wait till you become a parent.
I know. I'm gonna eat my words here, and I'm gonna eat my words here in about 10 years maybe. I'm gonna eat my words. But I always come down pretty hard, and not just in the sense of just trying to judge parents up the wazoo. I mean, listen, when I see a 2-year-old with an iPad, I do judge where I'm like, no, this is not how I grew up. Like, I know that children are capable of not having an iPad at 2 years old. But I think for me, like, whenever we talk to a guest, here's the one thing that always happens when we talk to a guest. We had a guest on that talked about human trafficking. And what it always comes back to in regards to repairing certain systems, like sex trafficking is something that, there's not a lot, but we knew that a lot of girls, when they go to school, like that's something that happens.
Sure.
And that's sometimes why they miss school. And
to be naive to think that it doesn't happen, we're only harming ourselves and, more importantly, those students.
Right.
Because I'm not sure if you know, North Carolina, this is one of the highest sex trafficking.
Charlotte, North Carolina is the number one city in North Carolina for sex
That scares me. And guess what? That's CMS.
Yeah,
And so guess what?
Sure.
It goes back to
Yes,
safety and security. And that just was a byproduct of what you're talking about. But it all rolls into safety and security.
And it does, but but deeper than that, and why I get onto parents is there has to be. I'm a big protector of the nuclear family. Like,
sure.
That is my huge thing. Now you're obviously, you're going for school boards, so you can't fix every family, right?
Nope.
That can't be expected. You're working within the limitations of the role that you're going for, and so that's completely understandable. But in regards on a more general level, I come after the nuclear family and I say, we got to protect this, because if we can shift a culture and say, okay, we're going to protect the nuclear family, we're going to work on that marriage relationship, and we're going to raise kids that have those standards, we're in a much better place.
I agree. And I'm curious that if there's any way we can have that type of outreach through the schools without either crossing that religious line or being preachy. Obviously, anything along those, there's going to be pushback. But you know what? I want to try and find out, how can we get parents more involved? How can we get them being more accountable to their child? Good, bad, and indifferent. No different than, because my firm belief as a parent, which you'll find out, same with you, Connor, is anything that they do is a reflection on that parent. And they can try and say, oh, they're just being bad, or that's just the way they are. Well, they are, because that's the way you raised them. I'm a firm believer in 3 things. There's no bad student or bad child. It's a bad parent. And there might be psychological problems and things like that. But at the end of the day, in general, there's no bad child. There's a bad parent. There's no bad student. There's a bad teacher. There's no bad athlete. It's a bad coach. All 3 of those figures, parent, teacher, coach, have such an influential role in kids' lives. And that's why when I was a coach, I took it very seriously, both on and off the court, to try and be as good an example for them. Was I hard on them? Oh, heck yeah. Just like I'm hard on my own kids. But knowing that if my players acted a certain way, that's me. That's on me, because I didn't coach them well enough to let them know that that's not how we behave. No different than students and their parents. That's not the way you behave in class. That's not the way you behave in front of teachers. If you have an issue with your fellow student, take it out. Go behind the building and have your fight there, not in the middle of class and disrupting the other students. There's just a proper way of doing things and a sense of decorum that, again, we are such a me-first society that we've lost our way, and the sense of entitlement that I think, to your point again, Jordan, if there has to be a culture shift, just a small one, then I think it's worth the fight.
Yeah, and even with stuff with school board, and even say you even have a program where you're trying to get parents more involved, that could be enough to start shifting a little bit of a mindset of maybe I do want to be more involved. Maybe I have been a bit absent, and sometimes it's hard. I get really conflicted, and the education realm, especially with K through 12, is one of the areas I have not 100% solidified my views on. You can't know everything.
Well, let's work together.
Yeah.
Once I'm on board, then you've got an in for CMS that you can anything and everything that you like to learn, especially coming from a K through 12 level on one of the biggest school districts in the country. You've got an in now.
I'm always about learning, and
we're going to learn together.
And a thing that I don't think schools, from what I can tell, don't do super well is critical thinking. That's not something that's really instilled. And so for Connor and I, as a background for both of us, we're both homeschooled. 100% homeschooled all the way.
Awesome.
Except I went to college.
Sure.
And I did dual enrollment when I was like 15, and then I moved forward. But we were both.
I did the same.
Yeah. So we were both homeschooled. And so.
Same with Eden?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our manager was also homeschooled. My siblings also homeschooled. I know some of yours were, and now they're not.
Yeah, no, a lot of them have gone to charter and public schools.
Yeah.
Or we were currently in them, actually.
Yeah, so we were raised a little bit differently, where we've heard things about the public schools. Actually, I won't speak for Connor. That's not appropriate. We know things about the school system, but kind of more from the outside. And so we're always like, I definitely have my opinions on it. I think they're about 90% correct, but there's always that wiggle room. But I'll take anyone up on any offer to learn a little bit more. And
sure.
If I agree or disagree, that's
that's all part of why we live in this country, because we can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And have open debate about things. And I want to invite contrasting opinions, but let's do it civilly. Let's do it where we can just talk amongst each other and not get so flared up and angry and emotional because I don't agree with what you believe in. And make no mistake about it, I'm going right into the lion's den on something that is as controversial, as conflicted than education, and especially in CMS. But you know what? I went to the Citadel back in the mid-'80s, and being an Asian American growing up in the South wasn't easy. You talked about something about standing up. I'm, as an Asian American, hopefully you talked about those in the community, thinking maybe I should step up and not necessarily run for public office, but get involved. I'm going to try to give hope because most Asian Americans stay in their lane. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to disrupt their lives because they're doing whatever it is as a lawyer, engineer, whatever profession. I hope to give them confidence that, okay, if this Asian American can do it in a very tough place such as CMS, then maybe they might have the motivation to do it. Because like I said, trying to inspire, belief and leadership. Because again, I'm the only Asian American in all of Mecklenburg County running for any office. So.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that. While I'm thinking, actually, Connor can say something if you want to. But it was in regards to Asian Americans. We can kind of scooch over topics here because I actually think this is interesting. Because I consider myself American Asian because I'm very Americanized, super Americanized.
And I'm just as Americanized as you are.
Yeah. But I consider myself American Asian because I've lived in America. I love this country, and I consider it my home on this earth. But it never, it wasn't until you said it where I've known that I haven't seen a lot of Asian Americans or American Asians really running for a ton of office. I've seen some, but not very many. And you said something about like culturally they kind of just stay in their lane. I never really thought about that because to me, I have critiques of Asian culture, but the one thing I love about Asian culture, and Connor on the website, we joke that he wants to be Japanese.
Why is that?
This will take us on a little bit of a rabbit trail, but my first introduction to Japanese culture was actually martial arts. So I was introduced to Shotokan martial arts when I was young, and I did that for a couple of years before I moved out of state and stuff. And then
did you continue?
I did not continue because when I moved up to New York State, I tried it a couple different places, but the good schools were either too far or too expensive.
Sure.
And I went to another one for a little while, and I came in as a white belt, and for lack of better terms, wiped the floor with their only purple belt. And I was like, I'm not gonna learn here.
Sure.
Because you don't discipline your students.
Yeah.
They're nowhere near on par as the students that I've sparred with before, because anybody from my old school would have kicked my butt at the time.
Sure.
So I did not have it in me to continue it there at schools that I just basically perceived as being having a lesser standard.
Being introduced to that, you want to be Japanese.
That was the start of it. Definitely got
awesome.
I definitely got interested in the culture and
called
everything
Turning
else.
Japanese.
What?
I think I'm turning
What?
I'm
Japanese.
gonna have to find it.
There's a song called Turning Japanese.
Do you know who it's by?
Heard it.
Look. Can you look
It's
it up
awesome.
on YouTube?
I think
I don't know if we'll get copyright for it. I'm not sure, but
And it's awesome. It's one of my, because I'm stuck in the 80s. I love 80s music. It's called
Turning Japanese. Wait,
It's awesome. The Vapors. That's it.
The Vapors. Okay.
that top YouTube one right there.
It's
Okay.
just awesome. I think
I'll
I'm
have to
turning
listen
Japanese.
to
I
it
think
later.
I'm-
Turning Japanese.
You know what? Now that I think I might actually know that song a little
It's
bit.
awesome.
But I mean, I think some of it too was anime, right?
Yeah, as
Yeah.
I got older, that was one of the media things that I started taking in. But it's like even before that, it's like there's a lot of the culture of the country and the way the country looks. Where me and my wife plan to go and visit. It's like, yeah, I want to stay in Tokyo, but I really want to see the older buildings and
I
go to the
think your
older cities
trip
and
would be
stuff.
much more, you'd appreciate your trip if you're able to do that, because no different than the Philippines. If anybody just goes to Manila and that's their only exposure, instead of going to the beautiful islands,
Yeah.
the over 700 islands in the Philippines. Oh my gosh, it's a beautiful country. But if you limit it to the traffic,
Just to the main-
congestion, and the smog and the pollution and just the millions of people in that small city, then you're going to hate the Philippines.
Yeah, no, it'd be like
So-
coming to America and only visiting New York
City.
City.
Oh
and
yeah.
Los
No,
Angeles.
it's-
Same
You want-
thing. Same thing.
Yep.
There's so much more to the country. So yeah, no, I as a whole, there's a lot of things I really like about it. But at the same time, I do become aware of some of the negative portions of the culture that permeates not just Japan, but a lot of Asian cultures.
Sure.
Yeah. But like I
There,
said,
you got your segue.
yeah, no, because it reminded me that you wish you were Japanese, and on our website, I say don't worry, he won't be trans Japanese anytime soon.
I won't do that.
Trans Japanese. I
won't
didn't even know that
identify.
existed.
Well, tell me, did you hear about this British influencer that decided to identify as Korean and get all this surgery to think that he would look Korean?
No way.
No joke. Can you find him? His name's Ollie London.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Are you
Okay.
serious?
Ollie, like Olly.
It'll show up.
No.
You're
Oh,
doing
it's
Muhammad
It's
Ali.
gonna give me a different Ollie.
Yep.
Oh boy,
That's it, right there.
It's
Yeah.
just a long one.
This guy. Okay, click on the picture of the pink hair. That's the best one. With him having no. Go up. That very top one. Very top. Keep going. All the way.
Right
there you go.
Right. The second to the left.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
second
this
to
one
left.
over here.
This is-
Yeah, after all the plastic
So
surgery.
he's like, he gets the surgery, basically squints the eyes, tries to squat the nose a little bit, and he makes this video. He's like, I'm trans Korean now. I identify as Korean. Korean's my homeland. He has this British accent, and so this actually happened, and of course the left was outraged.
Sure.
This was him before. So he's had surgery to have his cheekbones shaved differently. His nose has been reduced. His ears have been reduced. He has spent tens, it might be over $100,000 on plastic surgery now.
Wow.
And just face restructuring.
Oh my gosh.
But you know what? The left doesn't have any room to tell him not to do it because he's just being who he wants to be on the inside.
Yeah. But I thought you would find that interesting.
I do, and because at the end of the day, what people do is totally up to them.
Now, he's not just making himself look Korean.
Right.
He's making himself look specifically like a K-pop star.
So he must be a BTS fan.
Yeah,
Yes,
no big
that's who it
BTS
is.
fan.
Yeah, and I hate to admit it, my
Jimin, I
daughter
think,
gets
is the
so
one he's
embarrassed.
trying to
I
become.
love BTS.
That's your guilty pleasure.
Well, just because I'm a big fan of the Korean culture, and if you look at Koreans in particular, one, in this small country, they've got the biggest boy band in the history of our world, BTS. And then also the first international film, Parasite, won not only Best International Film, it won Best Director.
I saw clips of
and
that.
Best Picture.
Interesting.
Best Picture, not just Best International, Best Picture. And that's just amazing. And it's a beautiful, well-directed film. But that came from Korea. Many of our major electronics, Samsung, I drive a Kia. That's from Korea.
Yep.
So I'm just
I think the Raid movies came from Korea as well. Yeah.
So all that, the culture, the entertainment, I love Korean culture. I was there for a year when I was in the Air Force at Osan Air Base, about an hour from Seoul, and loved every minute. Of course, I was just too dumb, and I was only there for a year, and I wish I spent more time there. Me and my mom, because I have a classmate from the Citadel, he just retired from the Army. He's now working there. And so when we go to the Philippines for her trip, we're going to make a side trip and visit Seoul, because I just am so impressed with the Korean culture, and they still have respect for their elders. They still have those things that are important to their society. Now, as the generations continue to get older, no different than in the Philippines, because that's just gone. I respect that, especially both Japanese and Korean culture. You know, those respect for your elders and for your seniors, and just the way they handle themselves in society, their mannerisms, the cultural behavior, all these things I love about Korean. And so then you told me someone's being trans Korea. Wow, they must love it that much.
Yeah, this person is clearly mentally ill.
And try to say that it's anything other.
Yeah, no, it's just mental illness.
I'll extend that. The doctors that are performing that surgery are also mentally ill for doing that to somebody.
Yeah.
I think
or they're greedy. They're very. I would say it's probably more greed.
That's mutilation. So
yeah, it is. It is mutilation. But I think you said what I was gonna go into before we got into a segue of Connor's desire to be Japanese and man's actual journey to try to be Korean.
Sure.
It doesn't quite work.
That was definitely a segue.
Yes, it was, but it does actually kind of go into, you know, when I was talking about Asian Americans, when they stay in their lane, I think to myself, I have some issues with an Asian culture is a large generalization, because there are differences within the cultures.
Sure.
But there's a lot of things that we can learn from Asian culture.
A lot.
That's really important. And the key word I use is meritocracy, this idea of you work for what you get and you work hard.
Sure.
That is something that I feel like a lot of Asian Americans can bring that to the table. And it's a really important part of their culture that America desperately needs again.
Well, to your point, if I can share some of my culture within the school system.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
Okay, that's it. I'm leaving. And I'm dropping out of the race right now. You heard it here on Resident Skeptics.
That's all it took for him. All that passion and that one comment that did it. Go ahead.
No, just with respect to sharing it, because I never will ever force any of my culture or beliefs on anybody. But if I can share it and it connects and resonates with people, and more importantly, it will have impact, positive impact, then why not?
Yeah.
Well, that's cultural appropriation. You can't do that. Well rather, we can't do that.
You guys just continue to shut me down. Oh my gosh! First Jordan, now Connor.
We're a team.
I don't know.
That's one of those ones I love. It's like, you want to share your culture, so you're not going to get upset if somebody adopts something from your culture and lives that out.
Weird thing.
But they would consider that cultural appropriation. How do you get permission to do that?
It is almost bordering ludicrous, but
you want to share it.
I want to share it.
Yeah, you want people to experience,
or
and
maybe
to
not necessarily mine, but look at the Korean culture, the Japanese culture. There's so many benefits of just even studying, and in just the smallest way, implementing some of the things that work in general that can have application. Great. You're American Asian, and I think there's a lot of things that you learn from your mom, who's from Thailand.
She's also very Americanized, but she cooks really good food.
Oh, there you go. You can't ever escape the food, because Filipino food is one of the most unknown but great Asian cuisines out there.
I can say confidently, I don't think I've ever had Filipino food.
Yo, boy, you're missing out. You're missing
Am
out.
I missing out? Ooh.
Yeah.
'Cause all
Whether
I
it's
have-
adobo or lumpias, which is egg rolls, pancit, which is lo mein.
Wait, I got to
Yeah,
ask you a question
a lot of
that's
things.
really completely has nothing to do with politics. What is your opinion on Panda Express?
If I had my choice, I wouldn't go there unless I'm just like, the kids wanted to stop by. But with regards to Panda Express, I think there's other choices. Than Panda
It's like the
Express.
McDonald's for Asian
Exactly.
food.
It really, that's what it is.
I
And,
had
you
an
know,
Asian
so-
confess, and I don't think
I'm sorry.
that
Just
he
I mean,
loved it.
I'm keeping it real. So
I just had to ask. I just had to
because then if you said, "Oh, he loves it," and then next you know he's writing a bad Yelp review, that guy's a fraud.
yeah.
So he was just saying anything to get elected, and it
Panda
includes
Express.
Panda Express.
Yeah, I just had to ask.
That's funny.
I don't remember what you were even saying, but I had to ask you.
No, I can't remember.
Oh yeah, Filipino food. Yeah, I haven't had it.
The real Asian cuisine.
Yeah, because obviously there's tons of like Thai restaurants.
Yeah.
And you think about the thing about cultural appropriation is if you're so against it, don't eat their food. You're in their restaurant.
Free will.
In their
Don't even go to the restaurant. There's like 1,000 other restaurants you can go to.
Yeah.
So, but and along the lines of what Connor's saying, cultural appropriation, or just trying to share things that may or may not work. Why not? What do we have to lose? And anything that I can try on a positive note do to stimulate thought and spur activity to try and fix what's happening. That's what I'm going to do, because we've talked about several things. And hopefully I didn't get too complicated as what I want to do as far as solutions. And that's why it's connecting with people. I'm trying to keep it very simple. What things that we can do together, just if we have the courage to fight for it. And that's what I bring. I'm going to be a fighter, an advocate for these parents that are looking for someone that's going to stand up for them and for their kids. Same with teachers, though. They want the support. They're leaving in droves, because they just feel like they don't have the support on any issues, whether it's discipline issues, them spending money out of their own pocket to provide supplies for their classroom.
Which is that part to me always, whenever I see the teacher like asking their friends on Facebook, like, I made my Amazon wish list, like, will you help me? I feel so bad where I'm like, obviously you want to help them and people should help them, but like at the same time, you shouldn't have to.
No,
like the
not at
school
all.
should be, and that's
Without a doubt.
school
And that's where
supplies is expensive.
And that's
too.
what I think the priorities are so screwed up with, not only just this school, but other schools, because that's where I want to try and bring it back and dial it back and finding out where have we lost our way to where we can't even provide $500 for a teacher to get the things she needs to properly either decorate her classroom, provide the things that her students are going to need, and to more importantly, let her do her job. But now she's having to scrounge on a GoFundMe for her school supplies. How crazy is that?
Yeah, no.
And
it's
then
pretty
while
nuts.
it's big and $2.2 billion is big, that's why I just want to find out, where's the money going?
Yeah.
Because if we can't allocate $1 million for our teachers, and there's just under 2,000 teachers and we're losing them, why would they want to stay?
Yeah. There's no like good incentive to
None.
really, because you're overworked, you're
Underappreciated.
tired, and you don't get paid. I mean, I don't know how this works. I don't have an opinion on this. You don't get paid during the summer, from what I know, or you can split your salary up to where you are paid through the summer, but it's not any more.
No.
You're just splitting it up. So I don't know if I have much of an opinion on that. I haven't done enough research, but definitely.
No, I know a lot of teachers that took summer jobs.
But they're doing
elsewhere.
prep work during the summer.
Sure.
And they're doing all this.
But
work
that can only
anyway.
get you so much. And for those organized teachers that have experienced, they'll know how to manage their time and be able to spend. And because on the flip side, they'll have a summer vacation that most people don't have. you know? And so if they have a spouse that works and has a good job, then they can do that. And that's why many of them, if they're got dual income families, they can do that and stay in the profession. But when you start eroding support, when you make it more difficult for them to do their jobs, that's when the problems arise and dissentment, starts to creep in.
Yeah.
And then gets to the point where, why am I even doing this? And without teachers, we can't teach our kids. They are the core of any school, and I want to support them. And while I might not get the endorsement from the Mecklenburg County Association of Educators, that's okay. I even told them in my interview, if I don't get your endorsement, but I'm elected, I still want to work with you guys. I'm not going to hold a grudge. You didn't endorse me. You endorsed a teacher and the current school board member. Great. But when I win and I'm on the school board, I'm going to work with everybody, including them. Because just because I didn't align politically or ideologically wise, doesn't mean I'm going to shut the door. I want to try and be as accessible to these groups, to these parents, to these teachers, to everybody in the community and within the system. Because without the spirit of cooperation, we're not going to get anything done.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think that's a mature way of going about it. I think that would go a long way in higher political office.
Yeah, I think it's something that we need more of, for sure. It's a mentality that's been lacking in the country, and it's great to see you running with that type of mentality. And I think I'm going to start to wrap us up here as we have actually passed the 2-hour mark.
What?
Believe it or not.
God, amazing how time flies.
Oh, yeah. No,
is it still light out?
It flies for sure. It
no,
is definitely not light out.
Not. 100% not.
But, Ro, where can people find out more about you, get in contact with you? Care to share if you've got any social media handles or website?
Is there social media out there? Really?
I see you have a Facebook logo on here, so I'm going to assume you have a Facebook.
Yeah, you can find me, Ro Lawsin, for School Board on Facebook. And remember, Lawsin is with an I, Lawsin. Even when you're putting in Lance Lawson, you did with an O.
Yep. And
side note, if you look at come up with or meet anybody with the last name spelled with an I, I'm related to him. I mean, we've got a very
there's not that many of them.
There's not that many Lawsins. So Ro Lawsin for School Board, and then my website's very easy, rolawsin.com.
Okay.
ROLAWSIN.com.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then my contact information is out there, roforschoolboard@gmail.com, my number. Reach out, tell me, and parents are starting to do that. They said, hey, Ro, we like what we heard. I looked at your Facebook page. I went on your website. I'd love to meet with you.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing. Each and every person, if I can have a sit down, have a quick cup of coffee and start hearing their concerns and start building up some active discussion of the many problems that they like to see addressed. And more importantly, they don't want to just bring up the problem. They want to be part of the solution. How great would that be? And they're reaching out to me, and because maybe for the first time, they feel like someone's actually going to be responsive.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. And also, too, as an added note, if you are not sure who is in your district, who you're voting for, we'll put Ro's information into the description of our YouTube and Spotify. But I will also put a link to where you can look up your name in the registry and see what areas you can vote in and know if Ro is in your district.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah,
and my district is District 1.
District 1.
Yes, which is North Mecklenburg.
Yes, awesome. And you'll be able to see and know what candidates, and if you happen to be in District 1 and you like what you hear on this podcast, go vote for Ro or do more research into him. And also he has made it clear that you are also welcome to email him.
And one little plug, I just got the endorsement today from the North Carolina Values group. Out of all the 5 candidates, they only endorsed me.
And that's wonderful.
That's awesome.
It's
NC
wonderful
values.
stuff.
Yeah.
So with that, and if you're not sure what NC Family Values is, go look it up.
There you go.
That's my part of the outro. That's it. That's all.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Ro, it's been a pleasure having you on here.
It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you for coming. This was really fun.
Yeah. And everybody, you can catch us on Resident Skeptics, Jordan and I here, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So follow us there. And again, Ro, it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you for coming out here. It was fantastic. And
you guys are awesome.
Good luck in the races.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you guys, and keep up the great work in any